controversy continues to trade the tax reform bills in Nigeria. The House of Representatives had its fair share when one of the lawmakers moved a motion on some reports on the bills, sparking arguments among other lawmakers and throwing the House into further chaos. Arise correspondent Tunji Olanikwekun reports.
Tuesday plenary started on a good note until it was time for the presentation of reports by the House Committee on the tax reform bills. The spokesman of the House, Honorable Akin Rotimi, in his introduction said,
"The good people of Ekiti North, one federal constituency which comprises Ikole and Oyedele local government, Mr. Speaker, I'm from Ekiti State, the very first state in which our National Assembly caucus has unanimously endorsed the tax bills."
This statement triggered the anger of lawmakers, especially those believed to be against the tax bill.
Please, thank you.
After minutes of rowdiness, Speaker Tajuddin Abbas intervened, urging his colleagues to remain calm as he tried to clarify Akin Rotimi's comments.
Order, please, order. He's expressing his personal opinion. Please go ahead.
Despite this, the uproar continued, forcing Rotimi to apologize and withdraw his statement.
Mr. Speaker, my
colleagues are back. Please, I beg you. This has nothing to do with the tax bills.
Mr. Speaker,
Honorable colleagues,
I withdraw that
he has withdrawn.
Yes, sir.
He has withdrawn that statement, please. He has withdrawn it.
Also, Honorable Gali Mustafa raised a point of order on privilege, citing a publication in which the Deputy House spokesman, Honorable Philip Agbese, allegedly claimed that opponents of the tax reform bills are now seeking the speedy passage. Mustafa, who opposed the bill, criticized the publication, calling it misleading. It demanded an apology in the print media, an investigation into the claims, and even Agbese's resignation if necessary. Deputy Speaker Benjamin Kalu assured Mustafa that the matter will be thoroughly addressed to resolve his concerns.
This is unethical and immoral. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, we are calling, or I am personally calling, for this matter to be referred to.
Doctor must be heard in silence. Let's hear him in silence.
For him to resign or to be investigated to find out who, or to bring the list of those people that are opposing this, that now are asking for the speedy passage of this bill.
You have asked for this to be investigated, but you did not tell us whether we should send it to ethics and privilege. That was why Honorable Sada came up with that. It's not in your prayer. You only ask that the House do investigate it.
The four tax bill proposed by President Bola Tinubu have divided lawmakers along north-south lines, with many lawmakers from the north aligning with their governors who recently opposed the bills. Tunji Olanikwekun, Arise News.
In another development, a pro-northern coalition group stormed the National Assembly, declaring support for the passage of the highly contentious tax bill. Addressing journalists, group's convener Tijani Mohammed said the bill is in order, and that citizens should join hands to properly fine-tune it rather than calling for it to be withdrawn. However, while a pro-northern coalition group supports the bill, Kano State Caucus in the House of Representatives has unanimously rejected the controversial tax reform bill. The caucus's position was signed by 22 members of the group across party lines. Led by Honorable Abdulkadir Tijani Jobe, the caucus described the bill as anti-masses, insensitive to the feelings of Nigerians, and a law that will increase the hardship of Nigerians. Meanwhile, Chairman of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms, Taiwo Oyedele, has said that 90% of Nigerians support the tax reform bills currently before the National Assembly. Joining us now on the morning show is Taiwo Oyedele, Chairman of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms. Good morning, Mr. Oyedele, and thank you for joining us on the morning show.
Good morning, Dr. Abati, and good morning, everyone.
Well, very quickly, one of the things that we have been hearing about these tax reform bills, 4 of them, is that your committee arrived at its various proposals based on data. And you have also been quoted as saying 90% of Nigerians support the reform bill. Now, data. Can you tell us how you arrived at the data that this is about equity, fairness, justice? With data, with technology, give that indication. Because the main argument is about, oh, this is not just, this is not fair, this is not about equality. The foundation of your proposal.
Thank you very much. So I think it's always important to start with where we are today. And then the question will be, is it broken? Because if it's not broken, why are you trying to fix it? And if I just narrow this conversation to the VAT, which is the question you've asked me, today, VAT is shared among states and local governments based on 20% derivation, that is, where did we get the VAT that we're sharing from? And then 50% is equality of states, and 30% based on population. As we speak again today, we have at least a case at the Supreme Court where a state like Rivers State and also later on joined by Lagos State are in court, asking the court to rule that VAT is a state tax and the laws governing VAT should be enacted by the House of Assembly of a state, and of course the tax should be administered by a state. So I like to put it this way, that the conversation we are having today is not between the 20% derivation, because today that VAT among state and local governments, like I said, is shared 20% derivation, 50% equality, 35% population. Now, the states that believe they contribute significantly to VAT are finding it difficult to come to accept that they should only keep 20% of the contributions they have made. And that's why they have gone to court to say, let us administer this tax on our own. And they have won. The only thing now is that this case is pending at the Supreme Court. There's no judgment as of yet. But if the 2 judgments we've had recently, in the recent past, one is very recent, a couple of weeks ago, another one about a couple of years ago. About 2 weeks ago, there was a Supreme Court judgment that says that the regulation of lottery and gaming is within the purview of the state, and the federal government has nothing to do with it. Previously, we had the judgment of the Supreme Court in terms of regulation of tourism, hospitality, and it says it's for the state. So what is common to these 2 judgment is that they're not specifically mentioned in the Constitution, and therefore is considered to be a residual matter, and because it's a residual matter, is within the purview of the states. That's exactly the situation of VAT today in Nigeria. VAT is not specifically mentioned in the Constitution. So which means, most likely, when we get a judgment, if we get a judgment from the Supreme Court, it will say states should administer it. When a state administers VAT, then it becomes 100% derivation. So it's important for us to understand that our proposal to move derivation to 60% is actually a middle ground, because if we lose the opportunity of getting this 60% derivation, we're likely to end up with 100% derivation. Now, which, to be honest, is not bad, but it's going to create a lot of problems for businesses and for economic growth. So what is really wrong with the current system, apart from what I've just explained, is that VAT revenue, in terms of generation, is attributed to the states where the VAT is remitted. And that's lopsided. For 2023, the data we have shows that 80.26% of VAT generated in Nigeria was attributed to Lagos State, even though Lagos State's size of the economy as a ratio is just about 30% or a little bit less. So one, we said, let's correct this attribution of VAT so it reflects where consumption takes place, because VAT is a consumption tax. Then two, let's increase the amount that every state will keep out of what they have generated to, one, reward them and recognize that this is their income, by the way. And then secondly, to encourage them to create activities, economic activities, and stimulate formalization within their territory. So these are the two major driving factors. And therefore, we think that this is the only way to promote more equity in the sharing of that revenue, and also to promote economic activities across Nigeria. So that's essentially what the proposals are all about.
All right, thank you very much for that detailed breakdown, Mr. Oyedele. A number of things. I mean, people, even the governor of Nasarawa State, Abdullahi Sule, had said at the town hall meeting which you had a few days back that the bill itself is wonderful, only that there's some areas there that they don't agree with, and that beyond that, they weren't consulted. There wasn't wide enough consultation, especially with the subnationals. What would you have to say about this? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me, Mr. Oyedele? All right. We'll go on a quick break. All right, we'll come back very quickly in a short while to Mr. Oyedele. A number of things he said, like I said yesterday, he's been very consistent. If you've listened to him speak about the details of the bill and the reason for which they called for this review, he's been very consistent in justifying why it's important and why it has to happen now.
To a large extent, I still want to get a couple of clarifications, for him as regards, number one, the conversation about that derivation, and secondly, the court cases he's talked about, that, some states had gone to court as regards the derivation. And also, I'd also like him to put out the figures, so that I think that will leave us. He did put out the figure during the town hall, as regards the percentage, the scenario percentage, based on how much the states will get when this new law finally sails through. I think these are things he should be able to talk about. Also, there's been another angle, the constitutional angle to all of this, derivation, the conversation about that, the constitutionality of all of this, and how that will pan out with a change in all of this. Okay, I think we have him.
We have him back. Thank you very much, Rufai. We have Mr. Oyedele back. Mr. Oyedele, thanks a lot for staying with us. All right, so what I was asking was around consultation with the subnationals. A number of them have said the bill in itself, in its entirety, is not bad, but there are some parts of the bill that they might have given feedback about if you had consulted them prior to transmitting it to the House for, passing. What would you say about this? Did you consult the subnationals? Who did you consult? I know you said you spoke to a wide range of stakeholders. So why weren't the governors carried along?
Yeah, thank you very much. So indeed, we consulted and we continue to consult. We think that consultation is healthy for a process like this in a democracy on matters that will not only affect us today, but will continue to affect us for years to come. So when you say subnational, for a technical matter as this, you will then think about the finance commissioners. We consulted with them. You will think about the head of the Internal Revenue Service. They are actually the guys who understand these tax matters the most. We had a series of engagement with them, about 4 sessions, some of these lasting almost a whole day. We also have engagement with the governors themselves. But you would imagine that if you manage to get the airtime to speak to governors, either through the Governors Forum or the National Economic Council, they're unlikely to give you 1 hour or 2 hours. So there was a particular meeting where we got 15 minutes. So we understand that they have a very busy schedule. We also recognize that they may not be the best place to deal with the technicalities of what we are dealing with. That's why we spend more time with their finance commissioners and with the revenue service chairpersons across Nigeria. In addition to that, we were also allowed to speak to NEC. We did that twice. We also wrote through the Governors Forum requesting for the opportunity to meet at least 6 governors across the 6 geopolitical zones in their states. The intention being, let's go and sit down with them so we can also have the benefit of their cabinet members. We were not very successful with that, trying to get the schedules agreed. We have a couple of the governors where we're able to do that. Particularly, I will commend the governor of Lagos State. After we had that meeting, he then requested that we set up a joint committee between our committee and his cabinet. And we've been working on those issues for over 6 months. But we're always very happy to engage more. We think that what's happening now is actually healthy and good for development, because there's more attention now to these issues, which also means that maybe now it will be easier for us to get the opportunity to further engage. But in a nutshell, I'll say that we engaged. We're also very open to more engagements going forward.
Just for clarity, Mr. Oyedele, so did you engage the finance commissioners from the 36 states of the Federation, including Borno State, Nasarawa State, and the Northern States? Did you speak to all of them?
Yeah, that's another, very tricky one, because if you say you want to speak to finance commissioners, you go through their forum. You're unlikely to find any meeting, whether of the Governors Forum or NEC or Finance Commissioner, where everybody would attend. And I cannot recall, because I don't know all of them one-to-one, so I can't tell specifically whether the Finance Commissioner for Borno State was in attendance. But I would imagine, because we have more engagement with the Internal Revenue Service, at least four sessions, so he must have attended at least one of those sessions. So I would say yes. And even, by the way, on our committee, the committee that worked on these bills for over 1 year, we have 6 head of Internal Revenue Service from the 6 geopolitical zone that were members of the committee, including our discussions where we simulated what this was supposed to mean, along with the other proposals where people needed to build consensus. And for us, because of the data we're working with and the inequity we thought we were going to correct, we had not envisaged that this was going to be a pushback from the other states. We thought that the pushback was going to come from Lagos State mostly, and maybe a little bit from River State, because that's what the data we had was saying to us. It's almost like we ended up with the people we are fighting for are now fighting us. But that's why for us, otherwise would have insisted in speaking to maybe governors from states where they don't have a lot of derivation today, but we are trying to push their derivation up. VAT derivation, I think that word is just very sensitive, because people think about the oil and gas derivation where it's based on production. So if you're not producing crude oil, you don't get any part of that derivation. Whereas for VAT, every state consumes. So when you share anything based on derivation, everybody will share out of it. And in the Constitution, as we speak today, with respect to stamp duties, it actually says under Section 163 that, stamp duty should be shared 100% based on derivation. So what we are proposing is not strange to even our Constitution. When it comes to matters of tax generation, you must recognize where those things are being generated. Otherwise, we end up with a situation where one state will get a Supreme Court judgment, like we had for, I gave you 2 examples before. And then there's also the local government who will have no opportunity to discuss, negotiate, or agree on anything. It will happen, like today, and tomorrow VAT is gone. Everybody has to administer it and keep their revenue 100%.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Oyedele. And it's good to see you again, my brother, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele.
Thank you.
This is Rufai speaking. And see, it's not that you didn't consult enough. Like you do 50 billion consultations. When politics is involved, they will say you didn't consult enough. So please, just take it as your cross, the national assignment you are doing. But we all see your efforts. I mean, we know what's going on in this country, but it is well. Keep up the good work. I would like to talk about something very important. Number 1 will be other parts of this bill, because all the attention has been the VAT. Number 1, let's talk about other parts of this bill. The area around the free trade zones. What's going to happen to them? Let's talk about that. let's also talk about this development levy that's going to be holistic. This talk about the Naseni and all of that they're saying is going to be scrapped. Let's also talk about this area of this third-party involvement, that possibility of using third-party application on all of that. And lastly, can you also clarify this entanglement? You talked about the court case. Yes, Lagos and Rivers. We're also seeing some other states collecting consumption, some consumption taxes, especially from the real estate sector and all of that. With this new VAT and this derivation, should that still continue? Will that not also be part of the multiple taxing threshold that you want to reduce? Let's talk about these things.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rufai. Very important questions. So first, I'll just take any of them in whatever order. So today we have VAT across Nigeria, and then we still have a good number of states where they also collect another form of consumption tax, calling it different names, entertainment tax, hotel and event center tax, consumption tax. They have different names for it. And what that means is the businesses and the individuals who have to consume those items are having to now deal with multiple taxation, paying consumption taxes in different forms, and then increasing the burden on those people. So this reform is seeking to say, let's just do VAT and agree that's our consumption tax and discontinue with the other forms of consumption taxes. This is one of the reasons why we tried to convince the federal government, and we were lucky, which is why I will give credit to Mr. President, because, and it's not just this VAT alone, there are quite a number of areas where the federal government has ceded ground to the subnational. Another one is the electronic money transfer levy, and the list continues like that. So it was one of the reasons why we said, dear federal government, can you please give 1/3 of what you get today, which is 15%, reduce it to 10%, and give 5% to the state. And the federal government agreed. So that amount of 5%, it's multiple times the amount all the states are collecting from their consumption taxes, because the level of efficiency in collecting consumption tax, you can't compare it at the center with at the subnational, because consumption is a function of sales. And no state has the full view of the sales number of any business. So a company can play one state against the other and not pay the consumption tax. Whereas if you pay it centrally, you cannot play the FRS, because they'll have your full financial statement and they'll make you pay the taxes. By the way, those that are collecting consumption taxes today are not doing very well based on the data we have. So that's one issue we are trying to address. Let's get rid of all these other taxes and just focus on one and do it efficiently. So the other point you raise is around the development levy. So we have the company's income tax in Nigeria today is 30%, the tax rate. Then you have education tax, which is 3%. But I need to tell you, without sounding too technical, that 3% is on a base that is twice the size of the base for companies' income tax. So even though, legally speaking, the rate for education tax is 3%, the impact is about 6% on businesses. And you can do a simple cross-checking of what I just told you now by looking at the amount that the FRS collected as education tax versus what they collected as companies' income tax over the past few years. If company income tax is 30%, and education tax is 3%. Assuming we're on the same basis, our education tax collection should be 10% of company income tax collection. And I hope that my math is not confusing anyone. But that's not the case. Just to affirm that the 3% feels like 6%. In addition to that, you have Naseni, that's engineering and science. You also have the NITDA, information technology development. You have police trust fund. So a business will pay their corporate income tax, and then they have to deal with a number of other income taxes on their profits. And when they are done, whatever is left of that profit, before they give it to their shareholders, they also have to take out withholding tax of 10%. By the time you aggregate all of these taxes, it's very close to 50%. And the question is, at 50% effective tax rate on company profits, are you competitive? The answer is no. This places us as one of the top 10 in the world for the highest burden on businesses for corporate tax purposes. When you do that in a country, what you do is you discourage investment. The developed countries, particularly the OECD countries, discovered the secret a long time ago, and they were cutting corporate income tax rate. In fact, they were cutting it so fast that it became a concern, and we're calling it the race to the bottom, like who is going to get to 0% first. Because they realize that once you cut corporate income tax rate, businesses are attracted. And when they come, they hire people who pay personal income tax, they hire people who consume and pay VAT, and so on and so forth. So it's logical, and it makes a lot of sense to cut corporate tax burden. This is the reason why we said, let's take all these special taxes, we call them earmarked taxes, and consolidate them into one. And then progressively reduce that rate over time. And then whatever we collect from that, let's share it to the agencies that should benefit, including TET Fund, that's Tertiary Education Trust Fund, including NASENI, including NITDA. And then we said, let's give some of that money to the Student Loan Fund. So what's the thinking behind this? We said between when the law is passed and 2030, these agencies would collect some share of the money from this development levy. By 2030, they will no longer receive money from that development levy. So what they will do is they'll get funding through budgetary allocation. By the way, we have more than 500 government agencies. Why don't they all have special taxes for them? NASENI, for example, was established in the 70s. And there was a tax to be collected that nobody collected until a few years ago during the Buhari regime, when they just realized that, oh, we have not been collecting the tax. But guess what? NASENI has been in operation since then. So we're saying, one, those agencies should get budgetary allocation so that there's a process of scrutinizing the expenses to ensure that there's efficiency. And number two, very important reason for this is that we can reduce the burden on businesses. And if you take TET Fund, for example, by 2030, all the money we collect from this special development levy will go only to Student Loan Fund. And what you give to students to fund their education actually ends up in the university. So the money is still going to education. And in addition to that, we think that it presents an opportunity. Once you've catered for students that cannot afford their tuition, then the rest of us that can afford the tuition for our wards and children will then pay a little bit more, so that university lecturers will not be paid 400,000 naira. I think they should be paid like 5 million naira a month. We see what happens in other countries, and that's how you can attract the best, where they can do the work with the heart, body, soul, and mind, and be able to provide solutions to not only the problems for the economy, but even for themselves. We want to have universities generating power, doing agric and all of that. So essentially, that's the one around the development levy.
Mr. Oyedele, okay, good. As we yield the floor, can you just answer this, the role of third party? What's your take on it? Short answer, less than 10 seconds before Dr. Bati comes in.
Yeah, that's fine. So we intentionally, actually, this was a very intensive debate during our committee work. We said we don't want consultants. And I'm actually very surprised that people said we asked third party to do it, but they haven't mentioned the section of the law. So what I plan to do after this session today is to put something out there that shows the section that we have in the bills that says we should not use consultants. We say that you cannot use consultants for assessment. You cannot use them to do collection. The only thing you can use consultants for is tell them to come and teach you how to use SAP, how to use artificial intelligence. Let them come and lecture you, but they should never collect taxes. That is in the bill. This third-party collection, I can tell you 100%, it's not in those bills. People
Chapter
just made
3,
them up.
General
Please, when you see anybody saying it, ask them for the section of the law.
Let me read it out to you. Chapter 3, General Administrative Provisions, Part 1, 6, Section 68. Anything done required by relevant agency, a tax authority may deploy technology to automate, processes and tax processes and all of that. A relevant tax agency may deploy any technology, including a third-party payment processing platform or computer application to collect or remit taxes on the due supply of services to any person in the country. That's Chapter 3, General
Yeah, okay, I can explain that. So that's interesting. So actually, you know, the FRS has been trying to use technology to administer taxes so that they can know what companies are doing, so you cannot lie to them. And they ran into a very serious legal issue. Many companies refused them. They said they are bringing softwares and application that was not developed by the FRS, you know, which I thought was quite interesting. So I want to, and I don't want to promote any of these tech giants. I want to use something and I need something from Microsoft. I need something from Google. And somebody said, I cannot bring it. I must bring technology that the FRS developed. Since when did the FRS become a tech company to develop softwares and applications? So this is the reason why we put it there. It's based on the experience that we have seen in the past few years. It is not saying that the third parties will collect the taxes. It is empowering the tax authority to use applications, solutions developed by tech companies that are not FRS to be able to administer taxes. So that's what that section you read is saying, nothing to do with consultants.
Well, Mr. Oyedele, I listened to you on China's television, the town hall meeting that they had. You already addressed many of these questions, and I thought that was a brilliant outing on your part. So I don't want to repeat issues that are already in the public domain, even if public enlightenment is an important part of this assignment. But I would like to ask you, with all the reactions you have seen in the media and on the floor of the National Assembly, are there lessons learned? Are there areas of these 4 bills that you think, okay, from what people are saying, we probably need to take a second look at certain things? Because it's not just about you defending what has been done. You've had enough time to say, okay, there may be gray areas that we will address. Are there those gray areas that you would like to admit?
Thank you, Dr. Abati. By the way, actually, we are not even defending anything because we are very mindful that we cannot pretend that just because you have about 80 to 100 Nigerians in the room, worked for about 1 year, they came up with a bill in a country of over 200 million, they're suddenly perfect people, smartest people, and everything is perfect. No. What we're doing is explaining so that people will know the rationale. You know, how did you come up with this? What was your thinking process? That's all that we're doing. So we're not insisting on anything. We have no such power to insist on anything. Having said that, what lessons have we learned? To be honest, I think that the way things have played out now is actually very positive for the system. Before this controversy, I'm not sure you would have invited me to come for this program. If you call for a town hall meeting, which we did, more than 40 of them, most people did not show up. So now we have the attention on it, which is good. So we're having a robust conversation as a country. But in terms of the learning, I think it's maybe more around just insisting and particularly writing letters. So one of the things I observed very quickly getting to the public sector is the way people write letters for everything. You want to have a meeting with someone, you have to write. They have to acknowledge it, pass it around. They write back to you to say we've agreed, and then you write back. That we did not do a lot of that. So which means a lot of our engagement were either email, you're sending messages on WhatsApp, because we just wanted to get things done very quickly. But now we find ourselves in a situation where people are saying you're not engaging enough. If you ask us to go and bring evidence now, we don't have letters that are written. We wrote letters in a number of cases, but in many of the cases we didn't write letters. So that's a lesson for us in terms of that. The other one is maybe a bit more of carrying the general people along, the general population. We had taken the view that if we spoke to our most important stakeholder groups, like the manufacturers, the chambers of commerce, SMEs, speak to artisans that are doing the business, then speak to investors, multinationals, local investors, then speak to institutions, then speak to government. We thought that once we have done that, that the job is almost done. We had a retreat with the Senate for 2 days. We had another one with the House of Representatives where we're confident that these processes were sufficient. But once it became a controversy, and it's now an issue for the general population, and I have to be honest with you, taxation is not the easiest thing for the general people to understand. So we felt like maybe we should have just done this all along. But the tricky part is that many of our political leaders were not comfortable with us putting out our ideas in the public before they had agreed, because they felt we were trying to set up the people against them, like going on the street to say, you're going to be exempted from, if you earn 80,000 naira per month, you will not pay tax. And one state say, but that's all the people I have paying taxes in my states today. Why are you saying that? It's a delicate balance. While I would admit that there's a lot of lessons we have learned, to be honest, I'm not very sure there are significant things we would have done differently, if you look backwards today, with the benefit of hindsight.
Governor Zulum asked the question, why the rush? He thinks that this is being rushed, and that you should have given the governors that you consulted enough time to understand the bills and digest the details, but that it's like they are being ambushed. It's like the governors are being stampeded. Why the rush? What will you say to Professor Zulum?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say that we are rushing the bills. So first, we need to acknowledge that we are at a stage today where the majority of our people are struggling. They're in multidimensional poverty. Our small businesses are dealing with over 60 official levies and taxes, over 200 unofficial ones. We're having people struggling to just feed because the inflation on food is escalating. We have people who don't have decent jobs. That's why poverty rate is high, even though officially they say unemployment rate is low. We have all these issues that we're dealing with. If you want to provide relief for your people, you should do it in a hurry because it's urgent. It's an emergency. The way we should respond to these issues is similar to the way the world responded to COVID-19. There were countries in the world where they passed laws within 2 days because it was an emergency. We are not even doing 2 days. We've done over 1 year. When we had the session with the governors, was around May, some months ago. We shared the materials with them, and I said jokingly at the governors forum that I don't expect your excellencies will read all these details because we've also shared them with your people as well, the technical people. But we've done all of that, and then we have the bills. The bills are at the National Assembly. As we speak, the bills are already, maybe over 1 month already. So I don't think that's rushing it. The process that the lawmakers will go through is do first reading, do second reading, committee to committee to do details, including public engagement, which is the public hearing. And then they collect all the submission and still go back. Like you see, the Senate said 6 weeks. So I don't see what's a rush there. We should get these things done quickly so we can provide relief for the Nigerian people, because these bills are actually about the people, trying to exempt about 30% of workers from taxes completely, reduce the burden for up to about 90% of workers in the private and public sector, exempt about 97% of small businesses from the burden of having to pay taxes, reduce the cost of doing business for all the businesses in Nigeria, including large ones, by giving them VAT credits, which is about 7.5% of their cost. They will get that under this reform, as well as create opportunities for the Nigerian people, particularly our youth, to find jobs within the international business process outsourcing. Imagine 1 million youths making $1,000 a month. That's huge. Those are the things we have in this bill. And those things require that we move fast, with speed, but diligently, not making mistakes in the process.
Okay. Mr. Oyedele, please, I want to bring up that issue of third party again. I'm not so convinced with your analogy. It says here, including third-party payment processing platforms. That means it's a third-party platform that can process your payment or computer application to collect or remit taxes due on the supply of digital services to any person in the country. So a computer application, and there are many of these consultancies that have computer application. I can reel out so many apps that are made by these consultancy services that will collect, like you said here, and remit the taxes. And the top consultancies have these applications. So is this something you want to help us look at?
Let me explain that to you, Rufai.
Yeah.
No, there's no need to look at it again. I told you we debated it extensively, so I will explain to you again. If you want to pay your taxes, one of the things we have in those bills is to outlaw cash payment of taxes. We don't want people putting roadblocks with nails and wood to collect taxes. We want people to be able to pay taxes using, for example, USSD on their mobile phones. That's something you pay your tax. We want people to be able to use their bank cards to pay tax. We want people to be able to use money transfer. All this technology that I just mentioned now, which of it is FRS going to develop? Zero. These are applications by third parties. If you want to pay for goods and services today, and they give you a POS, that's not your application. Somebody developed it. So we want people to be able to pay taxes. Yeah, but I'm explaining the third party. I don't know whether you can hear me, Rufai.
Yeah, I can hear you.
So we're saying the third parties. Yeah, so the payment system anywhere in the world is done by independent people. So those people are third parties to the taxpayer and to the government. So if I ask you to pay your personal income tax today and you use, let's say you use MTN line and you do USSD, so the party that is helping you pay is MTN and your bank. They're third parties. It's not the FRS or Lagos Internal Revenue Service.
What's the transparency behind picking the third party people? That's the main question here. Because we know there are forces that have third party app collection and everything. What's the transparency? Who determines who picks them? Hope it's not going to be skewed to some people. That's the grounds a lot of people are raising. So you'll be able to identify and confirm with me that actually there will be a role for third-party collection and remission in the ecosystem. So what makes up the third-party people? Who picks them? What's the transparency? Are you going to have open tender process?
Okay, just to be clear, we haven't said that third parties will collect. So let's be clear, Rufai.
I can read it back to you again.
Third parties will
collect. I can read it back to you again.
I know what's in the bill.
All computer applications
just
to collect
give me time to explain.
And remit taxes, or collect and or computer applications done by the third party to collect or remit taxes. You wrote it here in section 69(2)(a).
Okay.
No, section 2. To collect and remit taxes. Computer application is third party.
Yes, let me explain, Rufai.
Yes, sir.
So, and I've just given you an example. If you want to collect payment for anything today, let's say you're even having a show. Let's say you are selling goods and services, and you want to collect payment electronically. How are you going to collect it? Aren't you going to use third-party applications to collect it? You're not going to develop your own payment system just because you want to collect anything. So, and I said to you that about 2 or 3 years ago, in one of the Finance Acts, we put a provision there to allow the FRS to connect with taxpayer systems so they can see what they are doing and reduce the evasion that some of the companies are practicing. And those companies said, no, you cannot connect anything to my system that is not from the federal government because I'm afraid that I don't know what these guys are going to be doing with the applications, right? To be honest, I was also in the private sector and I refused. I refused the FRS to connect to our system. Now, what we said is, other countries around the world, South African Revenue Service, HMRC, the IRS in the US, this is how they build their tax system. They have technology and solutions that are linked up with taxpayer system, through APIs. So that way they can even assess your system and see what you're doing. Now, because Nigerian taxpayers pushed back and said you cannot do that unless the federal government has developed the application. So we had to amend the law and put the clear language there. By the way, that language that you're looking at that you just read, it's not even new. Because once we did the amendment and there was a pushback, that amendment that you just read now was even included in some of the last Finance Act already. We only just replicated it into this new law. And let me say to you, because I know where this is coming from, people are saying, well, maybe the president wants to bring Alpha Beta to, the federal government and replicate what is being done in Lagos. Who says, when Lagos State did Alpha Beta, did they enact any law? Why do you need a law to bring in a consultant if you want to do that? And I keep saying this, Mr. President has not for once asked us to do anything. He has given us 100% freedom to do every single thing we recommended in those bills. So I feel it's unfair, but maybe people are entitled to their views and whatever it is that they like to debate. But you can trust what I'm telling you. I have no vested interest in trying. I'll be disappointing and failing myself and failing my country. If I have to make the sacrifice I've made to resign from my job to try and help my country and then to start doing something to help one person here and there. So I wouldn't do that, and no member of the committee will do that. So please just, understand our explanation. The applications can be developed by third parties, but for the tax authority to collect taxes. So this issue of how do you select the provider, it's not different from how you decide which bank to use today and the payment system you want to do if you have a business. That's the process that the
just make it transparent. That's all we call for. Let it be transparent. That's just it.
Thank you very much for your time with us this morning and for the extensive conversation on this bill.